Okay, make sure that you have some water at your table. You only need a little bit. And make sure you have a block of clay for everybody to share, or maybe you and the person sitting next to you want to have access to a piece of clay. And make sure you have a pin tool and a wooden tool as well. You're going to want this for smoothing out the inside of your bowl that we're going to be making. And we're going to construct the bowl inside this form using only coils. And we want to create some really interesting and beautiful designs using just coils. So the first thing I do is just pinch off a piece of clay, and I don't want to work with too much at once. Otherwise the coils get a little bit too long, they're hard to work with. So I start by squeezing out the clay so it already is looking like a rope of clay, just by gently squeezing and pulling the clay. Then I'm going to roll it a few rotations up and a few rotations back. And I'm going to keep going back and forth till I have a nice, even coil that's about the thickness of, I'd like to say, my small finger. You can go a little bit thinner, you can go a little bit thicker, but this is probably a good size coil to work with. And you want to make sure that you're using the same size coils throughout. So once you decide this is the thickness of my coil, start making a few more. So I'll pinch off another piece, squeeze it to get it started, and roll it. Now I'm going to roll out the coil. It's not just up, back, that will flatten it out. And if your coil does get flattened out, just gently pinch it. Maybe give it a little bit of water, because the canvas here is going to take some of the water out of the clay and it will get dry. You don't want the clay to ever dry out when you're making coil. So just add a little bit of water to it and just gently roll. I'm going to get this out of the way. Applying a little bit of pressure at a time. So these look to be about the same thickness. So now I'm going to take, I have 2 coils to start working with. I'm going to add a little bit of moisture so they don't crack, and I'm going to turn these into spirals. So this is going to be the first spiral I make, and I want to stop here. So I'm going to cut it off, set that to the side. I'm going to use this to roll another one. I'm going to set that to the side. Before I roll this up, I'm going to give it a little drink. And I'm going to curl this up, cut this out. Just to get started here, I've got 3 spirals. And I'll roll a 4th one. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of these, and I'm going to start it in the center of my bowl and just gently press it down. You don't want to press too hard. Then I'm going to take the other coils and I'm going to cut these in half by just pressing and sliding it out. Pressing, sliding it out. Now I'm going to take those and put those next to it inside the bowl here. You can see I'm kind of making an interesting pattern. Just gently flattening it so that the coils are all the same thickness. Just gently pressing it. Now I notice that there's some little openings there, so I'm going to pinch off little pieces of clay. Little pieces of clay and fit them in there. Little piece of clay, fit that in there. And I'm going to save this one for later. I'm not going to use that right now. I'm going to put that off to the side and this off to the side. And I'm going to roll another coil. If your mat is sliding all over the place, feel free to take some masking tape and just tape it down in a few places so it doesn't slide while you're rolling. Okay, I rolled this one out. I'm going to give it a little bit of moisture here. This time, instead of rolling it up, I'm going to simply put it in the bowl around that shape that I created in the center of the bowl, pressing it to fill it in. Use my pin tool. Now look for any holes that you think need filling in. I think I could fill it in there. I think I'll fill it in there. Now here's where I got a good start. I don't want my bowl to have texture or to be able to see the coils on the inside, and I also want to make sure that the coils are attached really well. When this is dried, we're going to flip this, take this out, and you'll be able to see the pattern of the coils on the back side, of the bowl. But so that your bowl is a little bit more functional, we're going to smooth, just gently smooth out the clay. You don't want to press too hard. So you can use your fingers for this part, or this is where this tool might come in handy. Just gently smooth it out. And I usually don't do this right away. I'll attach a few pieces of clay like I did, then I'll start this process. And it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth at this point. We just want to make sure all of the coils that I attached are now connected really well. So now I'm going to continue on with adding some patterns and some designs. So you can see how you can start with a spiral. You could also add little spheres as part of your design, but you want to keep the thickness the same as your coils. I'm going to put a pattern of, I think, spheres. And when I attach them, you gently press so that it's the same thickness. I can also create smaller coils. If they get too narrow, too tapered at the bottom, you might want to cut those off and recycle those so that you can keep the consistency of your thickness, of your coil thickness throughout. I think this one I will put around the shape. And wherever I see little holes, again, roll up pieces of clay, fill in the holes. Now here I think I will gently smooth out. I'm barely applying any pressure because the clay is pretty moist. I don't want to smash the clay so thin that I ruin the coil design on the back side. I only want to smooth what's going to be the inside of my bowl. So this process is going to take a little while. I think I'll roll out a few more coils, pinch off some more clay. There's a lot of different ways you can make patterns with your coil that'll really make your bowl so interesting to look at once you take it off the form. Here's another idea. You can take your coil, and of course before I do this next step, add a little moisture to your clay so it doesn't crack. And I'm just going to go back and forth. Back and forth. Okay. Then I can take that shape and add it to the clay form.